I first started out of college. I was actually a stockbroker at a big, huge financial firm. And it was really interesting because I wasn't always the most coachable person, which is interesting. I created a training company, so that's kind of weird, but I was not always the most coachable person because, when I was in high school, I was the fastest, I was the strongest. And so I played football, I played rush linebacker. And so, I had this kind of belief system that, people are who they are because of what they're born with, right? What they're born with is something that they've been given, and that gives them an unfair advantage. And I really believed that for a long time. And so I went to go work at Merrill Lynch and I made 100 cold calls a day and thought I was really, really good. I passed the Series 7 test to become a broker. In 21 days, it was this huge corporate record and so forth. And I was there for 2 years out of college. I remember the day like it was yesterday, my boss named Ron comes to me and he says, "You probably noticed, but you should have been fired like 2 years ago." And I mean that seriously, because if you look at your production level, you haven't sold really anything. And everyone else that's at your production level, was fired a long time ago. But I've kept you because you're the hardest working, worst salesperson I've ever met in my entire life. Hardest working, worst I've ever met. And of course, this is my speech. I've given a speech like this before, but this is that speech that really changed my life in that moment. He said, "You're not coachable. You try to do it your own way. All the people in the office we give you as mentors that are performing, much better than you, that are making, 6 figures a year doing this, and you're making $30,000 a year. All of them are telling you what to do, but you just refuse to do it. You just refuse to say yes the way that you're doing it because you think that you're better and you think that you have a better way than they do." And so he said, "So because of that, you're fired." That was it. And so that moment obviously kind of rocked my world, right? I've never been fired in my life. I'd always been, I thought the guy, I wasn't flexible, right? I wasn't coachable. I wasn't open to new ideas. And so I went to Barnes & Noble. None of you guys remember that store that used to be there. I went to Barnes & Noble and I sat down and I went to the self-help section. I found this book called Think and Grow Rich. If you haven't read this book, Think and Grow Rich, I think every human being should be required to read this book. So this book's real simple. It's from the 1930s when things were pretty rough and the Depression was going on. And basically this guy named Napoleon Hill, he studied what the best of the best kind of think about, what they do. The Rockefellers, the Fords, Vanderbilts, what do they think about? What makes them different than everyone else? And the book was called Think and Grow Rich. And so I'm reading this book from cover to cover. One day, again, I was fired and having else. And so I'm reading this book. I got completely consumed by this book. I was taking notes in the book before I even paid for it at Barnes & Noble. I was in there taking the notes. I couldn't get up and go pay it because I was just so kind of immersed into the philosophies of this book. And there's this one kind of section in the book and it said, your alibis. And the alibis were like the if-onlys at the time, right? In 1930s, so forth. These are the alibis at the time. And the alibis were, if only I was born, a different gender. If only I came from a different country. If only a different president was in office. If only the Republicans were in office. Only the Democrats were in office. If only taxes were lower. If only taxes were higher. If only I was born into wealth. It had all these kind of if-onlys. If only gas prices were lower. If only food was lower. Inflation wasn't so high. And it was a workbook. And it said, hey, Jason, go through and circle all of the reasons why you haven't, been a successful stockbroker. Let's circle all of those. That's what I did. I circled all of them. I circled the ones that, I didn't come from wealth. So a lot of the other brokers, some of them had money that their dad gave them to invest. And I didn't have that. It's only if I was older. Don't believe in a 22-year-old kid's and give them advice on their finances. So only if I was older. If I had gray hair, if only I had better leads. They only gave, for some reason, I don't know why they did this. I was thinking back then, right? Is that, all the inbound leads they give to the senior brokers. They give to the ones that are already successful. Their philosophy at the time was you have to earn one of these inbound leads. So you had to go out there and prospect and earn this. Well, of course, I thought that was unfair. And how's anyone ever going to be successful if that's how it starts? Again, there were people that were successful. I just wasn't one of them. And so I circled all these if-onlys, and then it said, turn the page. And it said, the only if-only that matters is if only you can drop your ego, find people that are more successful than you, study them, be mentored by them, model them, what they think about, what they say, and what they do, everything will change for you. So right now, I want you to be thinking about a mentor. I want you to think about someone in your life that saw more in you than you saw in yourself. In just a second, we'll do another breakout. You guys are going to share these mentors. You're going to share these people. But as you're thinking about that was my mentor. At the time, I had plenty of mentors. I mentored a lot of mentors now. It's funny, once you start kind of opening yourself to being coachable, finding new ideas, the mentors come from everywhere. People want to help everyone be successful and they want to be successful. And so as soon as I started getting myself into self-help and reading that first book, by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, that was my first mentor as it relates to the way that I thought about life. Of course, I had my parents, my dad and my mom, they taught me a lot of things. But, when you're young, your parents are idiots, right? So I had mentors before I really started listening to the wisdom of my parents. Some of that stuff came through when I was younger, but a lot of it came more when I went to college, when I started really paying attention to them and their wisdom. So what are you been thinking about? These mentors in your life. Again, maybe it was a book. Maybe it was a past boss, a current boss. Maybe it was a significant other, a relationship you've been in, a past teacher, a past coach. who was that, right? So you got to find these mentors, and you got to find, who these people are, and you got to reflect on these people. And so let me share with you my next mentor and then put you in a breakout. So I went from being a stockbroker and got into new home sales and selling for home builders. You go into the kind of a model home and someone sells you a house. And it was interesting. I wanted to figure this thing out. And so I said, you know what, instead of me being kind of uncoachable and finding my own way to do it, like I did the last 2 years of my sales career, I wanted to just find the most successful person, like what Napoleon said. And I want to find the most successful person, and I just want to model them. I'm going to just ask them questions, what they think about, what they say, what they do. And so that's what I did. So in the home building world, you have to work weekends because that's when people come in, nights and weekends, right? Major holidays. That's the time people kind of shop for stuff. And so, our days off were kind of weird. It was like, our day off was like on a Tuesday and a Wednesday. Weird times to have a day off. So you had to even find new friends during that time, right? Because all your other friends, they have days off on the weekend. And so you had to find even new friends, right? So it's just a kind of a weird time. But I wanted to go fast, and I knew the fastest way to kind of get ramped up and start selling more and making this kind of six-figure income that I desired at the age of 23, 24, is I wanted to learn how other people are doing it. And so I went to my boss and I said, who's number one? Who's the best salesperson here? Not because of the circumstance, not because they got a great location, not because they had the lowest prices, not because of any of that kind of stuff, not because of those advantages, but because of them. Who's the best, like Top Gun, best of the best salesperson? And they would tell me, oh, great, who's number two? And they would tell me. And I said, on my days off, I work with them. And they were like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't even know if they're going to want, what? Of course, no one had asked them that before. And I said, well, if they're the best, then I'm not going to get in their way, but can I please just shadow them? Can I please just be with them, for a little bit? I don't have time to kind of learn this my way. I need to learn it the best way. And if these people are the best, then I want to shadow them. I want to figure out what they're doing. I want to do that. And so that's what I did. So it wasn't for long, 90 days, no weekends off, right? 7 days a week, the 5 days I was working, but my 2 days off, shadowing someone else and figuring out what they did. Now, along the way, they started kind of slowing down. First, they were annoyed that I was there, kind of in their way. But afterwards, they started teaching me stuff. They started teaching me stuff that kind of made a difference in my life and helped me become very, very successful, very, very fast. I also found a book. It was a book at the time. His name was Bob Schultz. It was on Amazon back then. This is 20 years ago. It said, New Home Sales Handbook. It was the best book at the time. And so I read it. And I remember an average salesperson came to me one time and he said, you shouldn't copy everything that's in Bob's book. I said, well, why is that? And he said, well, I've been doing this and I just don't think everything in there you need to do. Like, don't waste time, for example, with a husband that comes in by themselves or a wife that comes in, the one-legged appointment, the absentee buyer, don't mess yourself with them, just start teaching me all these kind of like things. And at that moment, I just had this kind of awakening and said, well, here's the deal. I can only kind of choose one master, so to speak, right? And so I said, look, I respect that. This book was highly endorsed by some of the top people here that I know that sell houses. And this is what the manager told me to read, Joe. So I'm just gonna do that. That was the most popular one. It's like almost back in like middle school again or high school. This average performer was actually kind of a very popular person in the office. And so of course the weekly sales meetings, at first I didn't really feel like I kind of had a friend at work, but I wasn't there to make friends, right? I was there to figure out how to master sales and how to make six figures at the age of 20. That's what I wanted to do. That's all I cared about. That's all I wanted to do. So that's what I did. I literally just modeled everything the top performers were doing. I read everything in this book that was best at the time. I modeled everything it told me to do. Whatever it said to do, I did it exactly verbatim. And then because of that, I quickly became in the top 10% of sales in this big Fortune 500 company. Out of 300 salespeople, I was always in the top 10%. I'm sharing this with you because maybe like some of you, that you start off, kind of a little resistant to things, and you start off kind of wondering, is this really worth my time? I get it. I understand. That person's in me right now. I don't know. I just one day I made a choice, and that was keep trying to reinvent the wheel and do it my own way and figure out which my way is the right way. Or do I find the most successful people in the world and just figure out like, what do they think about, what do they say, and what do they do? And then just model them. I'll share with you something, and that is your relationships in your life. They won't get mad at you. They won't say that you're a different person, or some people worry about it, right? It's like, man, the version of you today is just like so different than it was in the past. But it's not going to be a negative thing. It's going to be a compliment. You're more unleashed. You're more fearless. You're more brave. You're more bold. Like, those are some of the things that you'll have by just kind of, again, finding people that you want to be just like, and then, what do they think about, what do they say, and what do they do? And then just saying, you know what, I'm going to be coachable, and I'm going to seek mentors, I'm going to seek new ideas, I'm going to figure this thing out. That's what I'm here to do, to be the best version of me, to give myself an unfair advantage, to ignite the pride, purpose, and respect, professional sales, and to be revered again for what I do.